We don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. We don't teach networking. We barely teach sales.
$25 billion of business that they were made through a referral.
Don't be a card dealer. Don't be just, passing out cards. Talk to people. Have a conversation with people.
You can prove that if you help each other, the group will help you. And
building a relationship with somebody. And the truth is, both introverts and extroverts can be good at networking. And networking is a marathon, not a sprint. And people treat it like a sprint. That's when they have problems with it.
The world of business is not just about what you know. It's about who you know. Welcome to Know Who, an international networking podcast. Hello, everybody. We're thrilled to have the first episode of this brand new podcast called Know Who, an international networking podcast. Today, for the very first episode, we have a very special guest, a man that has been considered the father of modern networking, who essentially built the largest networking organization 40 years ago that has grown into almost 80 countries, helping hundreds of thousands of business owners to grow their companies, create opportunities, while helping each other with a specific vision to change the way the world does business. Dr. Ivan Misner, it is such an honor to have you here.
Thank you for accepting. My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for accepting. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And we're here to talk about networking.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, sometimes we think networking, when we don't know about strategic networking, we think networking is supposed to be organic, natural, but we go to this networking events and you're fighting yourself into connecting with someone you don't know.
Yeah.
So normally you go to these events and you end up speaking with the people that you do know, or finding yourself in trouble to get to know more people. While in fact, what I have discovered in the last 10 to 12 years is that networking is structural, it's guided, it's intentional. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this misconcept that networking is more than strategic or structural? It's not organic or natural for anybody.
Well, I think the first problem is that we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. We don't teach networking. We barely teach sales in business school, which is amazing to me. And we definitely don't teach networking or referral marketing. And so what happens is people go out and they have no idea how to network effectively. And what they generally do is use networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. Hi, my name's Ivan. Here's my card. Let's do business.
Yes.
And they go right into trying to sell, and that's completely wrong. And it happens because we don't teach people how to do it. The basis of the foundation of what I teach is called the VCP process: visibility, credibility, profitability. You first have to be visible. So let's say you go to a networking event. It's your first time there. You want to meet people. You want to be visible. You definitely want to wear a name tag. You do want to have business cards with you, but don't be a card dealer. Don't be just passing out cards. Talk to people. Have a conversation with people. Networking is about building relationships, and it starts with visibility. You then go to credibility. That's the second phase. Credibility is where people, they know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. They know you're good at it because they've heard people talk about you. You've met them a few times. You've built a relationship with them. And then over time, and the credibility takes the longest time, then you get to profitability. And that's where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to give you referrals. And that process takes time. And networking is a marathon, not a sprint. And people treat it like a sprint. That's when they have problems with it.
And it's interesting when you talk about VCP, this is something that I learned from you and from BNI and all that we do in this networking organization and exercise, this VCP process. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, it's very innovative how instead of doing business with each other, we do it through each other. So that way it's not, awkward. And because some of the times we go to these networking events and you're trying to sell to me while I'm trying to sell to you.
Yep.
And we're not each other's best client, right? But we do know connections that we could potentially translate into a business opportunity. So I wanted to ask you, when you first started this community and this program, first group, was it the original idea always to refer? And if it was, how did it came to your mind to do this change of concept, like instead of doing business with each other, through each other? Because again, it's very innovative.
Yeah.
So I can only think back in 1985, when networking was not a known word.
No.
How did you manage to create that, and what was the idea behind it?
So I went to a lot of networking organizations before I started BNI. I was a management consultant. My doctoral work is in organizational behavior. And I went to some networking groups that were just mercenary. I mean, everybody I met was trying to sell to me. And I'd go home and I felt like I needed a shower because I'd been slimed by people trying to sell to me. And I didn't like those groups.
Yeah.
And then I went to these other groups. They were just totally social. It was happy hour and hors d'oeuvres, and nobody was doing business. They didn't even wear name tags sometimes. Yes. And it was just social. And I didn't like those. That was a waste of time for me. What I wanted was something that had a focus on business, but wasn't transactional, mercenary, and that was relational, but not totally social. And the glue that would hold that together is this philosophy that we have called giver's gain. The idea is that if I give you business, if I refer business to you, or maybe even if I do business with you, but if I refer business to you, you'll consider me, you'll possibly refer business to me. But it starts with giving before asking for something. And that was the way I created the very first group.
It's interesting when you talk about giver's gain. Normally, we as visitors or as people that are watching right now, they could listen to giver's gain and think, oh, that's romantic, right? And one of the things that I love is that it's a system, right? You can prove that if you help each other, the group will help you. And that goes back to what you were talking about credibility, because you build that credibility while helping others.
Yeah, well, I love. You say it sounds romantic. It does sound. It sounds woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
New agey. Well, let's talk about how romantic it is. In the last year, from the day that we're recording this, we passed over 16 million referrals worldwide. We generated for our members through those referrals over 25 billion with a B, 25 billion US dollars worth of business in what we call thank you for closed business, the amount of business generated between our members. 25 billion. Okay. Yeah. There are actually, based on United Nations estimates of GDP, gross domestic product, there are actually 100 countries in the world with a lower GDP than what BNI generated for its members last year alone. That's how romantic it is.
Oh,
okay?
Nice.
I mean, we're about doing business, but we want to do business through building relationships rather than just transactions.
Yes.
And there's just no better way to build business, I think. And we're affecting communities all around the world in a very positive way.
25, let's go back to that number.
Yeah.
$25 billion of business generated. And I love the fact that you said about this 100 countries with lower GDP than what BNI has built. And again, we need to remember this. This is not business for BNI.
No,
this is business
for the members. Correct.
So business that they were made through a referral that somebody was willing to help another person, another member, and then build this $25 billion business.
Yeah. And, a billion is such an inconceivable number.
Yeah.
But I forget the exact numbers. Anybody can pull a calculator out and do the calculation. Like 1 million seconds is just a few minutes, right?
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe an hour. But 1 billion seconds is years. It's decades. And so we did 25 billion for our members, with our members. And we did it by having a structured system, a process of building relationships, meeting regularly, and following a program consistently.
One of the things that when people are watching and get to know about networking, just to talk about other things, when you think about the business owner personality, most of the people think that these networking groups are better suited for extroverts.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I don't know. I would like for you to share about yourself, but if we're talking about me, I have an introvert personality.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when you see what I do for a living, speaking in front of people and managing groups and guiding, business owners, you would think, well, that's an extrovert.
Yeah.
But what I have found in this community is that it gives you a recipe, a method to do business, not business. That's the consequence, to build relationships. But in that way, most of the people could think, I don't go to these networking events because I don't feel comfortable. And what I always say is, if you feel uncomfortable, you could come to our event, because in this guided method, you would build relationships to each other. If I think about like me in a wedding table where I don't know who I'm sitting to, I won't start a conversation. Like my wife would, but I wouldn't, right? And it's interesting because if you think what I do for a living, I definitely would start a conversation because I have a recipe.
Yeah.
What do you think about the BNI members, Corporate Connections members, and about yourself? How is it your personality, and how have you capitalized that into networking?
Yeah, so there are some networking organizations that are really aimed at extroverts because you're meeting a lot of people you don't know, a lot of people you don't know. You don't meet them every week. But groups like Corporate Connections or BNI, you're meeting regularly, either weekly or several times a month, and there you're building a relationship with somebody. And the truth is, both introverts and extroverts can be good at networking. They both have a strength and they both have a weakness. Extroverts have no problem meeting people. They'll introduce themselves to anyone. What's the problem with an extrovert? They love to talk. And what's their favorite subject? Themselves, right? So extroverts are great at meeting people, but they're not real good at listening to people. Now, not every extrovert, some extroverts get it and they know better, but naturally, and not trained, extroverts love to talk. Introverts, on the other hand, are good listeners. They don't like meeting people. They have difficulty with that. So I recommend that if you're going to a big event, go with somebody who's a member already and have them introduce you around. And then introverts are great at asking questions and listening. A good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and should use them both proportionally. It's almost like this interview where you're asking me questions and you're allowing me to elaborate. So groups like Corporate Connections and BNI, they're really great for introverts because you're meeting people regularly. You get to know them. You feel comfortable with them. And I think both introverts and extroverts can work really well in groups like that.
What do you consider yourself?
Well, I know what I am. And it's funny, about 20 years ago, I wrote a blog on this. My blog is ivanmisner.com. It goes back, I think, to 2007. So you can see the blog on there. The blog is, well, I'll give you the name in a minute. I was talking to my wife 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, my late wife, and the kids were at school that day, so they weren't around, and we were having a nice conversation. It's like, this is what it's going to be like when we're empty nesters. And I don't know what we're talking about, but I said, oh, you know me, honey, I'm an extrovert. And she's like, no, you're not. I'm like, what do you mean I'm not? Of course I am. I run the world's largest networking organization. She's like, whatever you think. If you think you're an extrovert. I'm like, I'm a keynote speaker. I do interviews. What do you mean I'm not an extrovert? She's like, whatever you say. I'm like, oh, come on. So she said she had just read this book called The Introvert and Extrovert in Love. And so she started naming off characteristics of an introvert. And so I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I'm a little like that. I'm a little like that. And then the one that just hit home was introverts recharge their battery by being alone, maybe with family, but they don't want to go out anywhere. And that's how they recharge their battery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's totally me. But I am not an introvert. And so now I'm annoyed. And so I go into my office and I get online and I find a test to take on introvert, extrovert. And it comes up and it says, congratulations, Ivan Misner. You are an introvert who is a situational extrovert. And, then it described what that was. And what it is when you're talking about a subject that you're passionate about, or you know a lot about, or you're talking to people that you know and trust, you come across as an extrovert. Otherwise, you are a total introvert. Go apologize to your wife. It didn't say the last one, but I did. I was like, I had no idea. So yeah, I am. But when you think about the organization that I started, both BNI and Corporate Connections, it's not about getting hundreds and hundreds of people or thousands of people together for some big event. It's about, smaller groups, dozens of people. Our largest chapters might have 100 or so. You get together every week and you build relationships with each other. That's like total introvert. And it had never hit me until decades later when my late wife pointed it out to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the blog is OMG, I'm an introvert.
Oh my God, I love it.
OMG, I'm an introvert. So if you go to ivanmeister.com, go search on OMG, I'm an introvert story.
That's just great. And speaking about your blog, I know that you also have a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm a frequent listener. You have almost 1,000 episodes. Am I correct?
I just recorded my 900th episode, which will come out in a few weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
900 episodes.
Wow. And do you do that every week or
every week?
What's the cadence behind it?
Every week. Now, I do pre-record them and in advance. But yeah, it's a weekly podcast. It's generally only down right around New Year's. We take a break around New Year's because a lot of people are taking time off.
I remember maybe it was 10 years ago or 12 years ago when I was starting in BNI in 2012. There was no podcast, at least not online. I remember I had a CD. Like, I don't know.
We had the podcast in 2012. I started it in 2007.
Okay. I remember that I had a CD. It was in my car.
Yeah.
And I put the CD on and listened to some of the content, which was, it was created and narrated by you.
Yeah.
And you said, and I remember when you were speaking right now about meeting each other with events, I think you said something like how do you know if you are in front of a good networker or if it's going to be a waste of your time because maybe this person is too much transactional?
Yeah.
And since then, I've been following this advice that you said every time you meet someone new, start always asking and listening and see if they're willing to listen you back.
Yes.
Some people will just speak to you.
It's all about them.
Yeah. And they would never ask you so what do you do?
Right.
So if they don't ask you, it's a waste of your time if you're willing to explain them.
Yes, right? Absolutely. And that is the way to do it. You meet somebody, you start asking them questions. And, I say networking can be very transactional. So why go? You go to different networking groups to work your way through the VCP process. So if you're meeting a lot of people that you don't know, it's all about visibility. If you're meeting people that you do know or know many of them, it's all about moving that needle for credibility. If you're meeting with people that you're already doing business with, it's a completely different discussion.
Yeah.
So from visibility to profitability, it's a completely different discussion. At profitability, it's like, hey, how did that referral work out that I gave you? And by the way, the referral you gave me was great. It's that discussion rather than tell me what you do. Yes. And the credibility is building towards that profitability. So you go to networking events to work your way through those three stages. The first one being asking questions, like you said.
And I love what you were saying about, being year after year with the same group, because some people are skeptical, right? Yeah. Like, you're telling me to join a business group of business owners And it's going to be the same group of, let's say, 50 people.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah.
After a year, I'll meet everybody and there's no business for me left.
Well, first of all, there's always transitions that take place. People retire. Some people will quit. Some people move.
Yes.
People sell their business. So there's always new people coming in. And you want to keep the chapter fresh and alive. So it's not always the same people. But it really is about going deeper in the relationships. And it takes time to build that credibility. In our training, we talk about the time confidence curve. That no matter what business you're in, it's going to take a certain amount of time before people have confidence in your ability to provide a quality product or service. I remember there was a financial planner who was in for, and I want to tell you a humorous anecdote, but there was a financial planner who was in for 2 years, got no referrals. But he was investing people's retirement money, so it takes time for people to trust you.
Yeah.
And they told their director, I don't think I'm going to do a third year. And the director's like, you're in the business that requires the most credibility. I would definitely give it another year. 2 weeks into his third year, he got the largest referral of his life. It was his first referral in BNI, but it was the largest referral of his life. He quit. I mean, that's like quitting inches before the finish line.
Yes.
It's like, I quit, I'm tired. And he stayed. Sometimes it just takes time. If your network is a mile wide and only an inch deep, it will never be very powerful. What you want is a wide network. You want to know a lot of people, but you got to go deep. You got to build deep roots with the relationship. So here's the metaphor that I would compare it to. Imagine you have a lemon tree and you plant it. Mm-hmm. And every week you water it and take care of it. And after a year, how many lemons are you going to have?
0.
None. Yeah. So imagine going, well, it's not coming up with any lemons here. I'm going to rip it out from the roots and I'm going to plant it over here because it didn't get any lemons here. So I'm going to plant it over here. And you plant it and you care for it. And that second year, how many lemons are you going to have? None. Yeah. Right? So I see that with networks. People start to build relationships and they start to build these deep roots and they just tear them out and go to some other networking organization or even from one BNI group to another BNI group because they think, well, I'm not getting the referrals yet from this group. It's about building relationships.
Yes, I remember this phrase that you have said multiple times. I've heard it from you, and we use it when we're pitching, and inspiring people to join our community. It's not about how many people you know, but about how well you know them.
Yeah.
And one of the things, if you go back to VCP, well, first going back, first you have to be visible. We talked about that. Credible while helping others, you build that credibility. But one thing that I think I read this in your blog maybe 3 or 4 years ago, profitability is not a magical consequence.
Yeah.
You need to provoke it. Because some of the people will go to this community and say, I'm only here to help. I don't need any help. And then 3 years later, they're like, oh, I'm not getting that much help. And what I always say is you need to be willing to ask. Not only willing to help, but willing to ask. And as a business owner, that's not a natural skill, right? We're the ones that resolve, not the ones who ask.
Yeah.
How did you manage back then? And back then when you were having 1 group, 2 groups, 10 groups, to get people to ask, not only to ask, but to ask to what they need, not to what they think the group can get.
Right. So let me take your concept because you're right. I have met people who they're there and they gave and they gave and they gave and they forgot to ask. And it's okay to ask, especially in a group like BNI or Corporate Connections. It's okay to ask. That's why you're there. But you do want to build a relationship a little bit before you go deep into asking. That said, let me just give it a spin. Particularly new members, but I think all members need to use meetings like this as an educational opportunity
Yeah.
more than a sales opportunity. So you want to go in and teach people how to refer you or teach people about your business a little bit. One of my favorite weekly presentations that I ever saw in 40 years was years ago, a florist who came into a meeting and he had one rose. And it was sitting on the desk and he held it up and it was covered in cellophane and it had a grocery store sticker on it. Okay, he was a florist. And he took the cellophane off and he showed everybody. And he says, what do you guys think of this rose? And they didn't want to say anything. It was a nice looking rose. But it was obvious he bought it at the grocery store. He said, it's okay, you can be honest. I bought it at the grocery store right next door. And it's a very nice rose. They do a very nice job on the rose. But let me show you my rose. And he reached under the table and he pulled out a rose. Now, the rose that he got from the grocery store was like this big. His rose was like this big, a long stem rose, big flower on top. And he said, look at the stem of the rose from the grocery store and look at the stem of my rose. And his stem was like as thick as a pencil. Okay, thick stem. He said, the thicker the stem, the more water it draws up, the bigger the flower and the longer it'll live. He said, here's their rose. And then he went like this, right? And so the roses are falling. He says, here's their rose. Here's my rose. There's only 3 cents, 3 pennies difference in price.
Wow.
Theirs is more.
Wow.
That's what happened in the room.
Yeah.
They're like, are you kidding? People were like, I'll never buy a rose at the grocery store again.
Yes.
He didn't ask for a sale.
Yeah.
He educated them.
Yes.
He said, this is what you get when you come to my floral shop. And people are like, I get it. I'm there. And so if you do that kind of thing every week about your products or services, you don't have to say, hey, buy my product. Hey, I got a sale going on. Educate them as to why your products or services are amazing. And you're teaching them how to refer you, as well as teaching them why you're good at what you do.
Educating them. And some of the people, they think about, getting into these groups because they want to do more business. They want to grow their business. When they do get in, we'll tell them, business, that's not the purpose. That might be the consequence, because the purpose is to create relationships. How do you capitalize those relationships? Well, it depends on what you need, because some of the things that you could potentially obtain out of a networking group or community, they're unmeasurable.
Yeah.
It's not just about business, right?
Well, I like your description the second time. It's not just about business.
Yes.
So I do tell people that it is about referrals by building relationships, or it's about building relationships to get referrals. So, I mean, we're a referral organization. We're not a friendship organization.
Yeah.
Right? I got plenty of friends, but especially when I started BNI, what I needed were referrals. And what I understood was that I had to build relationships in order to get the referrals. You bring up a point, though, that's also important. There are other benefits. The other benefits are getting advice, getting support, and building friendships. People we look at the data, and they tend to join because they want referrals. They tend to stay because they made friends and got referrals. So they know very few people join because they want friends. But they stay because they've made friends and got referrals.
Yeah, because they know people like them.
Yeah.
Right? Other business owners that might be struggling with the same thing that you are, or might have been struggling in the past, and can tell you not, theoretical.
They can give you advice.
Yeah. But like firsthand advice.
Yes.
When I was on that road, I this, and this, and not only to, and I'm gonna go back to, I think it was 2017, the first time that I saw you personally in LA. It was the last BNI convention organized in LA, and you were giving this. We were a small group, like 25 people or so, about networking up. You were testing your content about networking up. And one of the things that you said was about work-life balance.
Yeah.
And you said about how the concept that you said about balance you said there's no balance.
Yeah, forget about balance. It's not
Yes.
possible.
Forget about balance.
And people always moan and groan when I
Yes.
say that. They're like, "Oh, come on, really? I thought I was doing something good."
Yes, yes. And I cannot remember the exact word
Well,
that you
I can
used.
tell you, I know. I talk about it in several of my books, particularly a book I wrote called "Who's in Your Room."
Oh my God. That is my favorite book of all time.
Yeah,
Who's in Your Room? I can tell you, I was laughing all the time. I love the anecdotes.
Yeah.
I love everything. It was genius. I love
Thank
the
you.
word.
I appreciate it. It's one of my favorite books. It's a self-help book. Obviously, it's not about networking. In a way, it's kind of about networking because it's about relationships, and networking is about relationships. So what we say in Who's in Your Room is balance is not really possible, because when we look at balance, especially as a business person, it's like our business has to be in balance with our personal life, which has to be in balance with our health and spirituality. And it's like, a scale.
Yeah.
And life is more of a juggling act than a balancing act. I don't think it's possible. But what I do believe is possible, and this is where the people who moaned and groaned then kind of went, okay, I get it. I don't believe balance is possible, but I believe you can have a life of harmony.
Harmony.
Harmony
That is the word.
Even the graphic for harmony, the yin and the yang are out of balance if you separate them. But together, they have a good life of harmony.
Yeah.
And so, listen, I have not had a balanced life. I haven't, but I was married 31 years. My wife passed away a few years ago, but I was married 31 years. I have 3 children. I traveled. I have 2.5 million miles traveled on one airline.
Wow.
Just one airline. So I was gone a lot.
Yeah.
But there's a secret to creating harmony. And I talk about it in Who's in Your Room. The first is be here now. Sounds simple. It's not. And what that means is wherever you are, be present to that moment, right? So don't be at work thinking about the fact that you didn't spend enough time with the family last night. And don't be at home thinking about the project that's got to be done at work. Wherever you are, be fully and completely present. Also, you got to learn how to say no. No is a one-word sentence. Now, no, thank you, or no, I can't help you. Or my favorite way is saying, if I said yes, I'm afraid I'd let you down. And here's why.
Yes.
You don't even use the word no, right?
Yes.
So we have a lot of different techniques that you use to create a life of harmony. I have absolutely had a life of harmony and a life that was way out of balance.
Yes, and I can tell you, I mean, that particular advice that you gave us it stuck to me, because back in that day, I was about to start with this responsibility of corporate connections for Mexico, and I knew that I was going to be traveling. I mean, I was traveling last week. Today, I'm in another city. Tomorrow is my birthday, and I'm not with my family. But again, that concept of harmony gave me a peace of mind.
Yeah.
And, it's more than any given business, because business you can do inside or outside networking organizations. It's how you integrate both advice, building a community, and, growing your business and helping others.
Yeah.
Right. So that particular advice, I wanted to tell you that it stick with me. And it is very powerful. And I always remember it. When I'm struggling, working Sunday night, I think, harmony.
Yeah.
Yes.
Harmony. Spend some time with the family. It's all right. And when they go to bed, then go back to work.
Yes.
That's right. I wrote my first book like from 11 o'clock until 3, 4, 5 in the morning once a week, where I would just write for 6 hours, 8 hours. And my wife and I would put the kids to bed. I'd put the wife to bed, and then I'd start to work. So there are ways of being creative with your time. Now, some people they can't do all-nighters, but they're early morning risers. Okay, so don't get up at 7, get up at 5, and work a couple of hours before the family's up.
Yes.
Whatever works for you, think a system that works for you, but try to create harmony and forget about balance. It's not going to happen.
And talking about books, I wanted to talk about your latest book.
Yeah.
The Infinite Legacy.
Yeah.
So thank you for this, by the way. So you write a book every year.
Approximately, yeah.
Okay, that's always inspiring when we go to this convention and you announce your new book.
Yeah.
And I always think to myself, if he can manage to do all that he does and write a book, I can manage my own life.
Yeah.
So can you talk about a little bit about Infinite Legacy?
I can. And you'll notice I have co-authors on many of my
Yes.
books. So that helps a lot to
Yes.
produce books. So really, I love the opening story to this book. It's one of Who's in Your Room in this book, I think, had the best opening concepts. The opening to this book talks about, it's a true story about a man 130, 140 years ago who was sitting in a coffee shop having coffee before he went to the office, and he was reading through the newspaper, and he got to the obituaries. And he saw an obituary that said, "The merchant of death has died." And it was his name. And he was like, "Oh my goodness, maybe somebody with my name died." Or maybe it was my brother who died just recently, and he read the obituary, and it was him. It was him. Somebody thought he died, and they did this obit. And the opening was the merchant of death has died. And this particular gentleman had invented dynamite. And dynamite, he did it for mining and, to clear buildings. But it ended up being, of course, used for war. And so he was called the merchant of death. He had created an accidental legacy, one that he didn't intend. So he sat down, true story, in 100 words, handwritten on a sheet of paper, not that morning, but later, awards to give people in literature, in economics, in math, and science. And his name is Alfred Nobel. Nobel didn't want to leave the legacy, an accidental legacy, of being the merchant of death. And he gave the equivalent of $250 million. I think it was 100 and some million back in the 80s.
Yeah.
To the Nobel Foundation, which of course now he's known for the Nobel Prize.
Wow.
And they not only give medals, they also give money. I think it's 1.1 million right now.
Yes.
That they give to the winners. And he left an intentional legacy. So really what we talk about in the book is that we can all leave an intentional legacy. It may not be millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But we can leave a legacy of some kind. And the legacy might be in the children we raise. My parents had no money, but I think they left a great legacy because whatever people skills I got from my mother. She was just great with people. And my work ethic, I got from my dad. And so, the ripple effect of my parents and the way they raised me affected me, and it affects, I'd like to think, many, many, many other people because of how they raised me. And so it doesn't have to be about money. It's really about how you treat people and how you show up in the world. I'll paraphrase, we have a quote in there by Jean-Paul Sartre. I'll paraphrase it. We all die too soon or too late. And yet our life is complete at that moment with a line drawn neatly under it, ready for the summing up. Your deeds in life and a little more.
Wow.
So if you want to leave an intentional legacy, you got to think about how you work with people, how you treat people, how you respond to people. We all have people that are in our story, right? I could talk about people that made a difference in my life, but this is my parents. But the real question is not who's in your story, it's whose story are you in?
I love that. I love that. Congratulations. And this is your...
That's my 30th book.
30th book.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
So before we leave, I wanted to again thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to tell you a personal story. When I joined BNI, that was in 2012. I was 19 years old. And I remember I went to this chapter with a lot of energy, and I saw the chapter, that's what we call the groups in our community. And I remember I saw the president of that chapter. And I thought to myself, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Sometime I want to have the opportunity to lead these people.
Yeah.
And I talked to my dad, who also is a BNI member and BNI executive director right now for 2 regions in Mexico. And I remember that I told him, you know what, Dad? I want to be a chapter president.
Yeah.
And you know what he said? He said to me, when we have BNI kids, you can be the chapter president. And it got me, it challenged me in a way that I eventually ended up being chapter president of that particular chapter. And of course, what I do now for a living, guiding this project in Mexico and connecting, business owners in Mexico and in other countries. But not in the
Corporate Connections, which is a sister company to BNI, which we haven't talked about. They're sister companies, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Corporate Connections is a project that we recently started, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but reasonably recent in Mexico.
Yes. We started in Mexico in 2019 with the first chapter. We now have 150 members.
Yeah.
And we're really, really proud of what we have built and how we can relate with the BNI community, with larger organizations and corporations. And not in a million years, when I started this project of leading Corporate Connections Mexico, I thought that I had the opportunity to eventually have a podcast with you and being here. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
It's truly, truly my pleasure. I enjoyed the podcast. I enjoyed the questions.
Thank you. Before we go, what are you reading right now?
You're going to laugh. What I'm reading right now is an Agatha Christie book of short stories. But, I try to do a couple of fiction books, and then I'll do a business book and a couple of fiction books. But right now I'm reading some actually Audible. I read business books, but I listen to fiction books. I read business books because I like to write notes.
Yes.
I know you can do clips on Audible, but I don't know why. But I read business books, but I'm listening to Agatha Christie.
That's awesome. What are if I ask you about top 3 books that you would recommend to business owners to read, not only about networking and relationships, but as business owners, what are the 3 books that came to me?
Well, the first book I read that really helped me scale BNI was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Yes.
It stands for the entrepreneurial myth. And I read that in the 80s. And years later, ended up meeting Michael, becoming very good friends with him. But he's the first person to talk about working on your business, not just in your business, but to learn how to work on your business. So The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I think a lot of business people, they don't have necessarily business degrees, so they don't really know how to manage people effectively. One of the best books, it's got to be 45 years old, but one of the best simple business books is The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. And I've had a chance to meet Ken several times. The 1 Minute Manager is just so simple and easy for a business person to learn how to manage people effectively.
Yeah.
So, those would be probably my top 2. Number 3 would be, I'm here for a Transformational Leadership Council event in Corporate Connections and BNI. One of them would be for the founder of TLC, Jack Canfield, his book, Success Principles. It's an excellent book. The 10th anniversary book, go to page 256, and I have a chapter in it.
Wow.
But I was recommending his book before he did the 10th anniversary edition. It's a really good book.
Awesome.
And Jack's a really good friend.
Great. So, Ivan, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And for everybody watching right now, well, stay tuned for the next episode of Know Who, the International Networking Podcast. See you soon. Bye-bye. In other episodes of Know Who.
400 million people came out of poverty in last 11 years. India is not only seeing world as a market, India is seeing India as a market.
More than 50% of the current energy in Spain comes from renewable sources.
I still take drives along roads or whatever and say, oh, there's a new solar farm just opened there. That wasn't there a month ago. That wasn't there 6 months ago.
If you really want to win Taiwan's, you have an influence to Taiwanese, you have better speak some Taiwanese dialect.
In a meeting, let's say German company with German company, it's not a problem to criticize or stop the CEO.
Okay.
You use the both hand, and then I have to take the both hand to receive it. And then I have to look at the eyes, but also check the meshi.
Everything starts with leadership. So I think Dubai has got 3 generations of amazing leadership.
Thank you for watching another episode of Know Who, an international networking podcast. On our next episode, we'll get to know about the 3rd largest exporter in the world, the house of BMW, Volkswagen, Porsche, and lots of other companies that are located in Germany. We'll get to know everything there is to know about their network, the way they do business, and how can you do business with them. Stay tuned and join me on our next episode of Know Who, an international networking podcast.